Welcome back to the Savvy Founder podcast. I'm so excited to dive into this episode with you. This episode, I'll be talking about 5 mistakes that causes hesitation for buyers. And this episode is actually a mix of things that have caused me to feel hesitation as a buyer and also just things I've noticed as trends, either in launches or when people are really communicating with their audience, things that tend to come up that just sow little small seeds of doubt or mistrust that make them really second guess whether or not they really want to go forward with hiring that person. So, without further ado, the first mistake is not embracing your humanness. And I've had phases of this before personally. And when I was doing it, I was curating the way that I showed up because I thought that it would be better for my audience to see me as perfect and very curated instead of just like showing quirkiness or really allowing my personality to be on full display. But really, it was more so that I wasn't in a place where I was fully accepting myself and thinking that if they had seen the flaws or what I at the time perceived as flaws, that it would be a deterrent for them. But what I ended up learning is that it was actually really refreshing for people to see and connect with someone when they're just fully being themselves. And I think it creates the most powerful opportunity to have real connection to someone. I also learned through this one that by avoiding just my humanness, I was attracting people who were misaligned, and I had to decide, did I want to keep that up and just kind of continue to filter myself, or did I want to just start showing up in a way that was very much me? And I know for me in the online service-based space, the service that I provide and the work I do with my clients, we're working deeply with each other. I'm in their business, I'm rolling up my sleeves, and us being aligned actually plays a really big role in just how everything is done inside of the business and after the purchase is done. This is where that clicked for me of having that misalignment. It's truly so much bigger than just the curation we might see on Instagram or the way that you talk or don't talk. It filters over into the way that you lead your containers and they're honestly the transformation that your clients have, because if you're not showing up as your fullest self, whatever that means, quirkiness included, then you're missing out on an opportunity for your audience to truly connect with you. Because the truth is that when they know who you are and how you show up and they get inside your container, it definitely will feel much better for both of you. You will feel good because you're able to just be you and they love that about you. And then for them, they know exactly what they were getting and they can make the best decision for them. Another mistake that causes hesitation for buyers is having messy email management. In my experience, it isn't actually the person's goal to have a messy email, but it's something that tends to happen over time because they think that after a funnel is created, people just follow that journey and it should be really simple. They don't have to go back and make sure it's working with everything else. But what I've learned is that email management is so much bigger than one funnel and a few tags. I've also learned that when someone is experiencing this on the other end, say for the person who opted in and they're getting, multiple emails from different funnels, or they purchased something and they're still getting emails, or they are still getting advertisements to buy something that they just bought, it really shows a lack of organization and it creates space for them to really question the level of disorganization that they might receive after they're in the container. And so this is something that is pretty easy to fix, but I see so many business owners that don't even bother to fix it. And I always wonder in the back of my head, is it because they're unaware? And that could be, and it honestly could almost be like another half of a mistake is not going through the process that your clients are going through. But for the sake of this one, I just wanted to highlight that messy email management is definitely making the experience of your potential buyers choppy. And it's something that is not that challenging to fix, actually. Okay, another mistake that I see that causes hesitation for buyers is not delivering as promised. And this is another one that tends to happen accidentally, but I've also seen this in some really big examples that most likely weren't accidental. But this could look like, telling your audience you're going to do something by X date and then say, for example, it gets moved. Now, let me clarify. This is not the same as if something does change and you're transparent with your audience, letting them know what's going on. That is the opposite, right? Because that breeds more trust for people. But it seems like, at least this has been my experience, is that when something changed, instead of the business owner or the service provider just coming up front and being like, hey, this is what's going on, and let me let you know what our options are here going forward, they just kind of will like gloss over it. And the feeling that it gave when I was on the receiving end of this is that it was like they were trying to be a bit deceptive, and it definitely created a ground for questioning whether or not I can believe in the transformation that they offer or what they talk about. It made me think about where are the other areas that you're saying something and not really being forthcoming about it. And so you can definitely see how this is one that really creates red flags for people. And I think sometimes it's done so subtly that we may not catch it as the owner, but it's just so important that when things change, just let people know and really make sure that you're communicating, because it's really disappointing on the side of the client when something is not delivered as promised. But I definitely think we have so much room to give ourselves grace and give our future clients or current clients a chance to really be understanding when it comes to this, which I think is sometimes where this happens accidentally, is my thought. Another example of this is like promising a certain delivery can sometimes make people feel like, as a business owner, okay, yeah, I declared it and now it's happening. But what I've learned is that without a process to ensure that the delivery will happen, especially when you're giving it a time frame to it, what ends up happening is you're creating a gap in the trust of what you're saying versus what you're doing. And I've seen this, like I mentioned, on grander scales of people saying, hey, I'm going to launch this thing, and everybody who opts into XYZ right now will be given special access to it. And then down the line, when they do launch that, they allow everyone to come in. And so this is another way that I think tends to breed distrust, because if you have people who did something because it was required for the next thing and then we go and change it, it's just a matter of, okay, if it does change, what can we do to make it right for the other person? And I think sometimes this is just missed and feels like the person is over promising, I wasn't going to allow this, but now other people can experience this as well. But you have to remember where your people coming in at and just make sure that you're doing right by the people who are already within your ecosystem. Another mistake that I see that causes hesitation for buyers is when you are going through the motions. And I'm going to call myself out here and say that there has been times in my business when I was going through the motion, and my thought behind it was, well, I just need to take action. So let me make sure that I'm doing the quote unquote right things. But what I learned was that the energy with which I showed up does matter, and doing something just for the sake of doing it on a subconscious level of the viewer or the person who is witnessing someone do that, it creates a sense of lack, it creates a massive lack of trust, because so much of our communication is nonverbal. People are reading the energy, the tone, there's so much that goes into it. And we can definitely tell when someone's just kind of like going through the motions. And this is something that I think it kind of goes back into the curation example of, being so curated where we don't want to just, give ourselves grace of, hey, maybe I just need this time off. But I think if we were to lean more into that side, it's once again showing more of our human side and that we're not machines, right? We're real people running real businesses. And I think that's very, very important. All right, and last but definitely not least on the mistakes that causes hesitation for buyers is having information flow that's hard to follow. This can come in a couple different forms. In my experience, it could be giving away too much information so that the person receiving it is just overwhelmed. And something that I learned is that, especially when we're operating within our zones of genius, sometimes we don't have a true realization of how much information our audience has and how much they can process in a given setting. And so it may feel like we are providing lots of value with the more information, but it could be actually causing confusion. It could be causing them to overthink. And so something that's really helpful is just being hyper aware of where is it that your audience is, and also making sure that you're starting from the point where they are currently at. And in general, something else about just information that's hard to follow, and I think the biggest reason that this tends to be an issue as well, outside of just an abundance of information, is making sure that we are sharing information in a way that people can actually learn. I remember while I was in my master certification for neurolinguistic programming, there was a whole section all about how much how different people process different information. And there is a way in which we can present information so that you are less likely to cause confusion. And I think a lot of times this is something that people miss just in an effort to give value, but we have to remember that it doesn't feel valuable to the audience when it's not communicated in a way that it can land from them. And that was the biggest lesson that I learned. Like, giving more information and going really in depth is not actually to their benefit. It's actually more beneficial to meet them where they are and go from there. So with that, we have now covered 5 mistakes that causes hesitation in buyers, and that makes them just like second guess. These are different things that can breed a little bit of it can cause lack of trust and them to question whether or not you really are their person. And something that you will have noticed about all of these, and I think that's the best part, is that they are all very, very fixable. I think the first step is really awareness. And then from there, we can go and make the changes that we need to make. I really don't think that a lot of people don't even really consider the view that your potential clients have. And so I think that's honestly why these are the type of things that tend to get missed quite a bit, especially in the online space, especially for personal brands. And yeah. So with that, I would love to know your biggest takeaway from this episode. What is it that you learned that you are going to start working on first? I would absolutely love to know. Go ahead, hop on over to Instagram and tag me at EssentiallyJanae, and I will see you in the next episode.